So I would start by saying I'm not a spokesperson for the Doge, so I'm not going to represent.
I just want to know what you think.
I'm just going to give you my views.
Elon Musk and Vivek are both very capable of speaking for themselves.
Let them speak for Doge. So. Yeah, so look, number one is, people have taken swings at this in the past. That's certainly true. The factors you described are certainly true. Having said that, there are some differences. And so one is, it's a whole bunch of things to talk about, but one is, there's sort of three, the way to think about it is there's like three threads here. There's headcount, there's spend, and those are related but different, separate threads, and then there's regulations. And then there's an intertwining of the three of them that has become salient as a result of the recent Supreme Court decisions on executive authority and on the so-called Chevron deference.
Right.
So there's been a set of Supreme Court decisions recently in which the power of the executive branch to basically have agencies that promulgate their own regulatory regimes and then staff and spend against those regulatory regimes without, basically being expressly authorized by Congress to do that. Like the Supreme Court, basically just made that decision that now is something that can be used to turn these things off. An argument.
I haven't in all the press.
Yeah.
I haven't yet noticed that Doge was paying attention to the end of Chevron deference.
Yes, correct.
That you guys have cottoned on to that and intend to make use of it.
Yeah.
That decisions get made by Congress and the President of the United States and not by federal agencies.
Yeah.
That's huge. Congratulations. In fact, let's end the show right now.
So to start with, by the way, I give Vivek a lot of credit on this, and so
Good for him.
Vivek has talked about this
Okay.
publicly, and there's some excellent legal scholars who are around the Doge process who are contributing to this. So like an argument, and I think it's a very serious argument. An argument is if there is an agency that is either itself should not exist, which we'll come back to in a second, or there's activities at the agency that should not be happening, or there's regulations that the agency is enforcing, there is I think, very strong argument to be made that it is actually necessary for the executive branch to stop doing those things in order to come into compliance with the Supreme Court rulings.
Oh, excellent.
Right.
Oh, excellent.
Which is the opposite.
Oh, excellent.
Which is the opposite valence of what everybody assumes. Right? Which is you're making some radical corrective change. It's like, no, we're doing what we're literally required to do.
You just flipped the burden of evidence.
You flipped
burden of proof.
Burden of proof, exactly. Right. And of course, the Chevron, these Supreme Court decisions have had no effect like that up until now. But that's of course because this last administration has had no desire at all.
Right. They wanted a new Supreme Court.
Yeah, exactly. But this administration has the opportunity to do this differently. Pop quiz, Peter. How many federal agencies are there?
Too many?
Yes.
127 is some figure I read someplace.
No, it's at least, it's like in the range of like 450 to 500.
Are you serious?
There is a claim going around.
There are now 15 cabinet departments. I looked that up after seeing this.
Well, we have this new innovation, I don't know when it came out, in the last decades, so the concept of an independent agency.
Oh, yes.
And I've read the Constitution.
Independent of everything, including the Constitution of the United States. It's outrageous.
I've read the Constitution, and there is no provision in there for an independent agency. By the way, there are executive branch agencies that have their own internal courts.
Yes.
They have their own judges. I've read the Constitution. That's nowhere in there.
Correct.
Right. There's a rumor going around. I don't know if it's true. There's a rumor going around that nobody actually knows the number of federal agencies. That there's no actual individual person who actually knows the answer. One is because there's just so many of them, and there's new ones created every year. But the other is we have all these fuzzy things now. The CFPB is like the canonical example right now. We have these sort of
CFPB is the
Consumer Finance Protection Board,
established by Senator Elizabeth Warren.
It's sort of considered Warren's agency. Yeah, exactly. And it is nominal. I don't know the exact legal terminology, but it's nominally an independent agency under the supervision of the Federal Reserve.
Right. She wrote the legislation specifically so that no president of the United States could fire the director of the whatever it's called, CFPB. Which is unconstitutional on the face of it.
On the face of it, unambiguously. It's still a unit of that. I don't know if that happened. I don't know the exact state of that, but it's a unit of the Federal Reserve. The constitutionality of the Federal Reserve has always been a very interesting question.
Correct.
The ability for the president.
You're good. I'm really okay.
These are interesting. And I'm not saying these are easy answers, but these are important questions.
Oh, no.
Right.
Just asking the questions gets you a long way.
Yes, exactly. And so you have all of the, and you know this, like you have all, these are the same issues that come up when people talk about like special prosecutors and all these things, which is just like, all right, it's, it may be a good idea in theory, it's literally not in the Constitution. What are we doing?
Right.
The Constitution is very clear. The president's the chief executive, the chief law officer of the United States. There is no provision in there. So anyway, so there are all of these agencies and components of the government that have just sprawled out Basically, a friend of mine, Curtis Yarvin, has this great line. He says, "We are living under the 80-year evolution of FDR's personal monarchy, but without FDR, right?" And so, because FDR, of course, is the guy, with the New Deal, and so he turned the federal government from this, basically this small overlay thing into this giant sprawling bureaucracy, and then it basically has continued to expand and morph and mutate under its own power. And anyway, so we do seem to have a Supreme Court that wants to, kind of pull this back in. So yes, there's an opportunity to do this. The DOGE team has, I think, very clever ideas on all three of the threads that I described: on spend, on headcount, and on regulation. I'll just give you one example: headcount. So the federal government. Well, here's another pop quiz: is how many people work for the federal government?
How many people work for the federal government? So as I recall, the Pentagon is a uniformed force of about 2 million and another 1.5 million civilians. And then the federal government, actually the head count hasn't expanded that much for 20 or 30 years, as I recall. It's about 2.5 or 3 million in Washington, D.C., civilian bureaucrats. Is that right?
How many contractors?
Oh, no. Okay. Unknown. Unknowable.
Unknown, unknowable. There are estimates that are very high. I won't wing numbers off at the fly, but there are estimates that the numbers are much higher.
Right.
So anyway, so then just sort of fun fact, which is like, what's the occupancy rate of federal buildings in Washington, D.C. right now by people working in the office?
Something like 25%, isn't it?
It's like 25% on average.
Lower than San Francisco.
Yes, it's basically that. The Washington, D.C. federal building complex is basically a ghost town. The security agencies are still full-time. The other agencies are not. And the extreme cases, you have certain agencies that are all the way down to a day a month. And there were this is true. There were collective in some of the agencies. This is the other thing, is in some of the agencies, the employees are unionized at the federal level, and there were collective bargaining agreements struck in some of these agencies where they literally during COVID got the right to never come back to work. And in one of the ones that I'm aware of, an agency I know well, they literally come back to work a day a month. And so what the employees do is they come back a day a month, but they pair the days, and so they come back for 2 days every 2 months.
Wow.
And so, and it's just like, and you ask any CEO in corporate America, like, how is this whole thing going? What are your employees doing? When they're in, every CEO will tell you, like, are these people, like, what on earth is happening? Are these people working? And so does the President of the United States have the legal authority to order people back to work? Does it count to be an employee of the federal government if you're not in the office?
Okay,
and so there's
all of this is just beautiful.
There's a ton of threads like that they're going to plan to.
All this is beautiful, really, truly beautiful. However. Yeah. DOGE is an advisory commission.
True.
I believe this is the way the president has set it up, as an advisory commission. It has its sunset date.
Yes.
It ends on it goes out of business on July 4th, 2026.
That's right.
I'm very happy. I like sunsetting anything to do with the federal government. Yeah. But where do you and Elon and Vivek get the authority to make anybody do anything, including Congress to pass enabling legislation, including the president to write executive orders? Right. Or, given what little background I have in Washington, what I immediately, before you can get John Thune, the majority leader in the Senate, to introduce legislation, he'll have political people looking at all the political ramifications, and there's going to be some senators say, "Oh, I don't know, that you stepped on the toes of my constituent here," and the politics is going to start at you guys.
Right. So I'll give you one more.
How do you get stuff actually done?
Can I give you one more first, and I'll answer the question? So I forget the exact term, but there's a legal term. So the Constitution authorizes, it says Congress authorizes money for the executive branch to spend. There's I forget what rescission, is it called the rescission? There's a legal term that basically means that the executive branch is also not allowed to spend less than Congress appropriates.
True. Which is what I have a recommendation, which is that you look at the 1974 legislation that removed from Richard Nixon, or it removed because of Richard Nixon, the ability of the president, which at that point had been traditionally accepted, to impound funds.
That's right, impoundment.
We want more impoundment. We want to get back to impoundment, correct?
Right, impoundment, yes, impoundment. I forget which way it goes, but impoundment is the concept that the president legally is required to spend the money that's appropriated. The president is not allowed to save money. Right. The president is not allowed to spend less money than Congress has appropriated. Once again, if you read the Constitution, it doesn't say that.
Right.
This has been an issue of significant constitutional debate over the last 40 years, literally since that happened. And there have been, Wikipedia's big, there's lots of arguments back and forth on this.
Right.
I don't know if this is the kind of thing that the Supreme Court would look at. might be a good idea, right? So,
but the president of the United States, I mean, you don't have to be a genius in political science to construct the argument, which is that there's only one man or woman, one person who faces the entire country in an election, and therefore can be said to represent a national, as opposed to all these little parochial interests, a national interest in an overall ceiling on the federal budget, and that is the president of the United States. Correct?
Yeah. So that's the answer.
Okay.
So that's the answer, and the answer. And by the way, to be clear, I'm not Doge. I'm an unpaid intern.
Yes. But we're having fun, Mark. And let's the details.
Vivek and Elon are running it, and then it itself is not getting set up as a permanent agency. You're exactly, it doesn't have the authority to execute on everything we're talking about. But the White House does, the executive branch does, and the president does. And so it will be as it should be. It will be a decision of the president on what he wants to do with these recommendations. The people being staffed into the positions. So the new head of OMB is very, has talked publicly about being very aligned with this. The new head of OPM is actually a partner of ours is going in there. He's very aligned with this. And so the executive branch will have the execution capability to be able to do this, but it's at the president's deference, and we'll see what happens.
But from what you have seen on your many visits to Mar-a-Lago, this has the personal interest and support of the president-elect of the United States.
Yeah, he said so repeatedly. He was asked the other day, and he always gets asked, like, do you still support Elon? And he's at least so far 100% of the time, he's fully supportive. And so he's greenlit this. I mean, look, Elon has been living at Mar-a-Lago, right? They're doing this. And so look, I've full deference to the president. He'll do what he wants. This is there. Let me give you one more thing on this, though, and this goes to what's happening more broadly in the environment. And this is one of the reasons why you have all this panic now about the decensorship of the internet. Is that you'll recall? So I'm sure the Grace Commission tried to explain to the public what was happening with federal spending. I know Al Gore tried to. He went on Letterman and tried to articulate it. Ross Perot at one point was trying to do it with the flip charts and all these things. But we had a Senator Proxmire out of Wisconsin for a long time.
Of course.
Had the Golden Fleece Award. Yes, he would come out every year with like the crazy spending things. But it was always like when Proxmire used to do it, it was always like, it's just like 2 minutes once a year on NBC News. Of course, what does Elon have and what does Vivek have and what do the rest of us have now is we now have the ability to actually ventilate this information in public. Right, we have the ability to actually show and demonstrate this and actually expose this to the public view on both sides. Number one, here's all the stupid stuff. Like, here's all the stuff that clearly just like you're being taken for a ride on, right? And then the other side is, by the way, with corresponding cuts, here's the money that's being saved that's going back, into the taxpayer pocket. And so there's PR is it's beyond PR. It's not PR anymore because PR kind of implies you're going through the press. Those days are over. This is going to be direct interaction with the public. And
Mark, we've just been through a decade now in which we were told again and again and again that Donald John Trump represents a danger to democracy.
Yes.
You are describing a renewal of democracy.
Yes, 100%, clearly.
All right.
100%.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
Yes. Yes, and this will be the key. I just as an observer, I say this will ultimately be the key. The key ultimately is going to be the direct relationship of the president with the people. Like that is ultimately going to be the key. And if the people are on board with the president, if the people are on board with the president has tremendous power. That gives the president the ability to get a lot of what he wants done through Congress. If the president doesn't have the support of the people, Congress can roll him arbitrarily. And so, as Reagan knew this. By the way, FDR knew this. Like all the good presidents knew this. Trump 100% knows this, and he does this every day, and he's going to.
If you can bring the country with you, you can go anywhere.
Yeah, that's right.